Hi everyone, Wigtown is one of my favourite places. It's Scotland's book town. Book towns can be found in various places throughout the world, but they're towns normally where their main industry has disappeared, something has closed down, and they need another form of industry to support all the people who live there. Occasionally people decide to make that bookshops, which is just really fascinating. So Wigtown is a place where a lot of the residents who live there have turned their living rooms into bookshops, and it's now Scotland's book town. People go there to visit specifically to see the bookshops, and they have festivals 2 times a year, the main one being in the autumn. So I was there this year to do an event for Franklin and Luna Go to the Moon, and I've been there a couple of times before. I wrote about it in my book, The Bookshop Book, which is all about wonderful bookshops around the world. In it, there's Sean Bythell, who runs the largest secondhand bookshop in Scotland, simply called The Bookshop. And then opposite his bookshop, you've got Reading Lasses, which is a feminist bookshop with a cafe in it, run by a fabulous woman called Jerry, who's also a humanist celebrant. So she marries people in her bookshop. There are lots of fascinating characters who live in Wigtown, and it's always a joy to go there. So if you can ever visit, do so. When I was in Wigtown, I sat down and spoke to another favourite person of mine, who is Jessica Fox. She is the author of this, which is 3 Things You Need to Know About Rockets. Jessica used to work at NASA, then she had a dream of working in a secondhand bookshop, so she googled secondhand bookshop Scotland, and Sean's bookshop came up. Sean has since written a book called Diary of a Bookseller, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. So in here he talks about someone called Anna, who's Jessica. In here she talks about someone called Ethan, who is Sean. So now you have all of the information. So this book is about her move to Scotland and falling in love in a bookshop. I wanted to sit down and have a talk with Jessica because she's someone who does all of the things. She's always looking for exciting new projects. She set up I'm not going to talk about it too much here because I'll spoilers. So I basically just wanted to sit down and talk to her so that you could hear how wonderful she is and all of the excellent things that she's done and has been doing, and so that you could learn more about Wigtown as a place, because who doesn't love a town that is filled with bookshops? So I'm going to hand you over to my past self talking to Jessica. This is an episode of Books with Jen, so it's my podcast. You can continue listening to it by watching this video, or you can download the episode to listen to while you're out and about, and I'll leave details of how to do that in the description box down below. As well as that, I'm also giving away a copy of Jessica's book, 3 Things You Need to Know About Rockets, and also a copy of Sean's book too, The Diary of a Bookseller. This is signed, I forgot to get Jessica's book signed, but this one is signed by Sean. It says, "Congratulations on being alive." So if you would like to win either of these books, let me know in a comment down below. Let me know which book out of the 2 you would like to win, and then I'll pick winners at random using a random number generator. I'll do that on the 20th of November. The giveaway is international, so you can enter wherever you happen to be in the world. I really hope you enjoy this episode of Books with Jen. I hope you like listening to Jessica. I think Sean might be in it at some point. I haven't edited the podcast as I'm filming this intro. He did come in at some point and comment on the size of my microphone, but that may have not made the cut. Next time I'm up there, hopefully Sean and I can record something together as well. Anyway, enjoy the conversation on Books Great. Lots of bookish love. Bye. I would love to chat to you about creativity and doing lots of different projects, because you do those things.
Too many.
Well, okay, let's start. Well, it's not the very beginning, but let's go back a bit. What did you do when you worked at NASA? What was your job?
So I was NASA storyteller.
I know.
Yeah.
I just love this title. I'm just like, what is that?
I know. A lot of people told me, they're like, "Do you give them apple juice and read them Goodnight Moon before they go to bed?" And I'm like, "No, that's not what the NASA storyteller does." I worked. So NASA has different campuses all over the U.S.
Okay.
Which means they have different centers that do different things, and the US is huge. So there's already massive communication challenges between, how did the people in Florida, who are working on one part of a mission, talk to the people in California? And each different center has their own culture. So I would say the Johnson Space Center in Texas, maybe it's because of the cowboy culture, but they're really into manned missions. They want to put a man on Mars. They want a man to go to the moon. And where I was based out of, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, they're super into robotics. Okay. They're screw people, let's just put a rover on here and a rover on here. And so even within the same organization, you have all these different kind of cultures within NASA. you also have all these like really different disciplines. So you have like chemists and engineers and biologists and administrators and politicians. So you have a lot of people speaking different languages. And so they needed communicators, people who found innovative ways to communicate. So when I say I was a storyteller for NASA, everyone thinks it's more outward facing. Like, I didn't do PR. I didn't like try to convince people that the moon landing really happened. I was helping scientists communicate with each other, almost like nerd whispering.
Okay. Mm-hmm. You're like, let me translate this for you and pass this on to somebody else.
Or like we like hired tons of different people to come in and do workshops. We hired like an oral storyteller, and he did the first ever oral storyteller story for NASA, which was awesome. It made Buzz Aldrin cry, which I'm really proud of, because he like is not he's not an emotional man. And we were thinking of doing film festivals. I did improv for scientists. We just found really creative ways to try to get scientists to communicate better. Ways that people who are in a communication business like writing might, or podcasting, even might take for granted that those are skills.
Yeah. That is so cool. So what was it about it that made you decide you wanted to change?
Yeah, if it's so good, why did I run away to Scotland? I don't know if it was the heat of Los Angeles or the fact that in LA I was in traffic all the time around very new buildings, and I kind of wanted to go somewhere where there's no traffic and very old buildings, and it was like cold. Yeah. But I started having visions of a bookshop by the sea in Scotland. And I don't know if your process of coming up with stories is sort of similar, but what I do is every morning, I need to be better about this, talking about creativity and doing multiple projects. Self-discipline is like a huge theme. And even just time to play for yourself. I don't know if you find this too, but the more you do this as a career, the more I think people start thinking, well, what's my next project? How is this going to be? How am I going to do this? Instead of just like having studio time or play time to like create just for yourself.
Well, because you panic thinking, okay, I need to do stuff that earns me money now as well as stuff that's going to earn me money later, and I can't predict which one of these things is going to...
But that's exactly right. It's like planting a garden where you actually don't know the growth rates of all these things, or like when they're going to come to fruition.
Yeah, and people talk about that like second novel syndrome, because when you write the first one, you're presumably not in the publishing business yet. You're not thinking about what happens to it afterwards so much. You're thinking about the creation process, but then later you're hyper aware of all of these other things that you don't have that secret space anymore.
Totally. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And then it's, it's like, you look at painters and they're like, this is my studio and here's all these paintings that no one's ever going to see, and I just play with color and I get into like things, and I was like, why not I just played with words just for kicks, just like to see how they sound together, or even image. So what I used to do, and I really need to get back to doing it, is there was a great composer who I love named John Cusiak, and I have tons of his CDs. I put the music on, I'd sit down, and every song I'd have to close my eyes and think of an image, and then the moment the song changed, I had to drop what I was writing and go to the other image that came up.
Oh, okay.
And so I'd go through a couple of his songs like that in the morning just to get my brain sparking. And then I go back through those images, and I might want to explore them and like dive deeper. Some just are there and I don't use them again. But a girl behind the counter working in a bookshop by the sea in Scotland with this like woolly jumper, and it's like a cold day and there's like a bell above that just like kept on coming back no matter what song I played. Like no matter what I thought about, the image kept on coming back up. And almost like in a movie, like the more I explored the image, I like got closer to the counter and I saw she was reading a book, and then she like looked up from the book and it was like my face. It wasn't like a character, it was like my face, and it freaked me out. Like totally freaked me out. And I put it aside for a couple days, and that feeling was so visceral. I know what it felt like to be behind the counter, and I really wanted to be there. So I typed in late one night, used Bookshop Scotland to Google.
And if you're like Sean and you know Google, or maybe you hadn't thought about that, but you call your bookshop the Bookshop.
Yeah, it's gonna
come up.
Well, Wigtown's the first thing that came up, at least then, when you put in use Bookshop Scotland. And then once you click on the Wigtown website, which was probably made when Wigtown was founded, it was like a really basic website, but it's nice now. Yeah, I should add. But there was a list of bookshops, and his was the first bookshop on the list, called the Bookshop. And at that time, he had his holiday cottage also advertised on his website. So in my head, I had like a whole plan. I was like, I'm going to live in that holiday cottage. I'm going to help him in the bookshop. I'm going to live by the sea in Scotland. It's going to be perfect.
He's never met me yet, but this is what I'm going to do.
I don't even know who this man is. I knew he was a dude because of something he wrote, but like it could have been a lady. So I wrote what I thought was like a normal email. And for some reason, my sense of normality was me writing hi on my hand and like taking a picture of myself. I'm like, that sounds totally normal. It would be fine. So I sent that to him. And I got like a one-line response back with like no punctuation, no capitalization. And it just said, tell me more about yourself. And so I pictured him being like 80 years old. His like grandchildren would be like, that's where the F is on like the keyboard. And like it was like painful for him to write an email that long. So I curtailed my tone towards this elderly gentleman who's been kind enough to let me stay.
Can I just say, like, this sounds like the most American thing and the most like British thing just coming together.
I know, it's ridiculous. And so I was like, I'm very responsible. I work at NASA. Like, it's okay to let me into your home. For some reason, I thought that was equatable. And within a couple of emails, I booked my ticket over. And he seemed really nice. He was saying that, look, I have this big Georgian house. He's like, there's no heat, so be prepared. There's a huge literary festival on at this time of the year. And he's like, I don't need help in the shop, to be honest. But you're a writer. Like, you might just want to stay here and enjoy the festival. I was like, who does that? That's, like, ridiculous. Because a stranger just invited me to their home. And so I booked a ticket, took time off, left. And when I landed in Glasgow, I started freaking out. Because I was like...
Who is this person?
I was like, yeah, I had to go through security. And they were like, who are you staying with? And I was like, I'm staying with a person. And they're like, well, how do you know the person? I was like, I met him online. And they're like, have you ever met him before? I'm like, no. And for some reason my mom questioning me didn't freak me out, but this guy questioning me, I was like, what the are you doing? And then I arrived, went down the escalator, saw a guy with this like mop of curly hair behind this newspaper that he was reading, or maybe he was reading like Viz or The Week or something, and he had his legs crossed, so there was like a patch in his, I saw he had like holes in his trousers, and for some reason that like really endeared me to this person. I was like, I hope that's the guy. And he's not 80, he's like very good looking, and I thought he was very good looking and like disheveled and like exactly what you hope a bookseller would be. And it was Sean. That was Sean.
So how long did you end up staying the first time around?
First time around, I think I stayed a little over a month. I stayed through the festival. It was awesome. He's right. The house wasn't heated. It was freaking freezing. Even the shower was cold. But the company was amazing. Like, Sean and I got on like house on fire. He had a flatmate, Martin, at the time, who I adored. And it was just like a literary Mardi Gras during the festival. There was a lot of booze, a lot of interesting people coming through the shop. And then I went back to Los Angeles afterward to continue my job. And I really missed it. And it took me a while to figure out, like, it was Sean that I missed rather than just everything else.
So you came back. And then when did you start writing the book?
The book, I'm really bad with timelines. I think I started the book 2 years into my stay here. 3 years into my stay. It came about because a writer named Anna Pasternak, she wrote Daisy Dooley Does Divorce. She was here speaking at one of the book festivals that I was at, and she heard about our story. And she's like, look, I really want to write your story as like a little article. I think it's like great. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, if you meet...
It's kind of mine.
Well, also, I was just like, so why would anyone be interested? I was like, if you make Wigtown the main character, like I think Wigtown's amazing. So like talk about other people in the town and change names, totally fine. And she's like, yeah, okay. And I was like, well, where is it going? And she said something like the Daily Mail. But because I'm American, it's really sounded like a local paper to me. So I was like, yeah, totally fine. That's great. And the next thing I know, it was like Sean's face, my face, like a whole article, like expose about our relationship in the Daily Mail. And then from that, I got calls from publishers, and I said no to everybody. I'm like, no, I can't write. I was like, I can't write. I've had tons of English teachers tell me I can't write. I was like, no, thank you. And this one lady called me named Vanessa Beaumont. And
That's such a publishing name.
And she was just I don't know if it's a British thing, but she was so lovely in the way she was persistent and not taking no for an answer. She was just really nice about it, but like really persistent. And she also said, she's like, look, why don't we make a deal? You write the like intro, whatever intro you think is going to be great, and I'll tell you if you can write or not.
Okay.
And so I said, okay. And I did. And she's like, yeah, you can write. I want you to write the rest of the book. And I'm like, fine, I guess I will.
It's like your homework.
Totally.
The school you never signed up for.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, that's amazing. So can you share some of your...
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, Jen. Sorry.
But this is a podcast for you.
No,
this is what it's supposed. This is how it's supposed to work. Can you tell me some of your favourite Wigtown memories of the festival or outside of the festival, whatever you want to share?
There is an event on at this festival called Things That Shouldn't Happen to a Book Festival, and it did jog a lot of lovely memories for me about being here. I mean, one of the memories that I loved was there was a guy named Gibby who had a mobility scooter here. He actually had a license plate that said Gibby 1 on the back of it, and every season Gibby would like pimp up his mobility scooter. So like during Christmas he had like Christmas lights and like a jingly hat, and you could just hear him coming down the road.
That's not the person who bought the mobility scooter that Nikki bought and left outside the shop.
No, but that would be brilliant. Yeah. That would be a great tie-in. And like Gibby to me was like always the harbinger of the seasons. So like you could always tell like when things were about to change or autumn was about to come because the way he like
he accessorized.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And so that's like I don't know why, but the people here, he's no longer with us, and so things like that. Or Jessie at the picture shop, who was absolutely in love with Sean. She was when I knew her, she was in her 80s. She dressed immaculately. She worked 6 days a week with her own shop. She never let children into the shop. She was cantankerous and witty and very funny, and she adored Sean and kept on telling me every time I came in, she said, "How's my boyfriend?" Meaning Sean. And she said she couldn't wait to get him into a bath and run his hands through his Titian locks.
Oh my god.
I was like, tell me more, Jessie. She was brilliant. I miss her. So I miss people, and I think about them. Some funny stories. Robert Burns, an impersonator, came to the Wigtown Book Festival. He was supposed to host the Burns Supper, but like out of season because it wasn't the time to host a Burns Supper. And he had something called the Burnsmobile that was like literally called the Burnsmobile on the side of his car. He also arrived wasted. Like,
well, that's in character.
I was thinking maybe he's just like a method actor. Like he really went for it. But he like stepped out of the car, absolutely reeking of alcohol. Apparently made a total bosh of the dinner, but we didn't know this because we were in the author's green room at Sean's sitting room waiting for his return. So he came absolutely drunk, made a beeline for Sean's cousin and wouldn't leave her alone all night. And I don't know how he got her number, but after he disappeared, after offending a lot of people and sitting on another author and just being an absolute mess, we got a voicemail on her answering machine saying, "Hi, this is Robert Burns. I'm lost in a field. I can't find my hotel. And by the way, I've lost one of my sideburns. So if you find them, will you post them to the following address?" Which is one of my favorite voicemails I've ever received.
That's amazing.
Brilliant.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So just happy memories here, a lot of them.
Can we talk about the open book?
Yeah, totally.
It's so fun. It's so fun. So tell everybody what it is.
You should do the open book.
I would.
We should get you.
You booked up like years in advance.
I know. Well, at some point I thought I couldn't be the only crazy American with visions of a bookshop by the sea in Scotland. I think there's got to be more of us. So late one night at the pub, I was talking to Finn McCreth about this idea of getting people from around the world to come over and run a bookshop. And so we came up with this idea of a bookshop holiday together. And I knew there was a bookshop, lovely bookshop called the Book Corner. 2 floors, lovely, on the corner of Wigtown Square, where the woman who owned it really didn't want to run a bookshop anymore, but I think she felt a responsibility to the town to keep a bookshop open. So she was in this weird limbo. So I walked in and I told her my idea, and she was like, "Yes, I will offload my bookshop as long as you keep it a bookshop." And Sean's parents, I pitched them the idea, and they ended up buying the building without it being on the market. Wow. They were just like, we were like, all right, wait, we'll take it over. And they worked tirelessly to bring all the bookshops from upstairs downstairs to make it like a cozy, really well-stocked bookshop. The rest were put in storage in Finn's farm, and then we converted the top into a flat. So now people from around the world can come and run their own bookshop. It's a bookshop holiday. They have full autonomy to do what they want. So when you come to the open book in Wigtown, we give you the keys. You come on in. You have the whole bookshop to yourself. You can get rid of all the books. You can reprice them. You can do the window displays. You can have any open eye hours. Some people close it the whole time and just travel around town. But people really like working in a bookshop. It's very funny. Yeah.
Well, as someone who worked as a bookseller for 10 years, I just can't get over how you're getting people to pay to run a bookshop for a week. I love it.
It's totally, do you know it's so fun? It's we consider it a cultural immersion experience.
Yes.
And not to be cheeky, but visa-wise, I've had my own visa problems, so I'm well familiar with the system now. And you can't volunteer without a volunteering visa, and you can't work without a working visa. So we can't pay them to run the bookshop.
Yes.
They can't keep any money. They can't volunteer and do it for free. But they're paying for a holiday experience. So they're paying for a cultural immersion experience. And they don't even have to run the bookshop. They can do whatever they want.
But you encourage them to do something fun if they can, something different.
Yes,
right? So
totally.
what are some of the fun things that people have done?
I mean, we've had like karaoke nights with South Koreans in the bookshop.
Of course, I mean, why wouldn't you have that?
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
We've had Brazilian wine tastings. We've had language nights. We've had a steampunk couple do a jousting evening where it was like biscuit jousting. Have you ever done this? It's fascinating.
No, tell me
Okay,
more.
well, late one evening when you have nothing else to do,
Cool.
you make a very hot cup of tea, you have a stack of biscuits next to your opponent and you have to play chicken. You dip the biscuits in the tea, and whoever lifts and eats first loses, except if you lift and
it breaks.
you lose automatically.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So whoever gets the right timing of it wins.
Okay, I'm going to have to try that.
It's a great way to eat a lot of biscuits, I think. Yeah.
So what are you doing these days?
These days, I just finished my next book called Tales for New Age. And I was working at the synthetic biology lab at Edinburgh University, as one does. And that's where Darwin went to school. And it was part of the labs that worked with the Roslin Institute to clone Dolly the sheep.
Okay.
And they are doing amazing things with synthetic biology and cells. Synthetic biology is basically genome engineering and creating cells to do different things and to grow in different ways and to create doctor cells for the body and just mechanically engineer cells.
Yeah. So can you give us a specific example of what they're doing?
So they are looking to create doctor cells, so the cells that are programmed to do different things in the body depending on if something turns on or off. So for like insulin regulation, for example, they are looking at. My knowledge of biology was very basic, and it kind of still is, but
I'm sure it's better than mine. So.
In the olden days, they used to have to take embryonic stem cells. Embryonic stem cells, the reason why they needed them, and they were controversial, clearly, because they're from embryos, is because the very beginning of life, the stem cells are almost blank. They can turn into anything.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And now what they can do, which is intense, is like if you give me your hand and I can flake off some dead skin cells, they can revert them back to stem cells and use those.
That is really cool.
Isn't it super cool?
Yeah.
So that's really cool. They're trying to build a completely synthetic human genome just using chemicals. They're doing the Synthetic Mammalian Center for Synthetic Biology is all these different labs doing just incredible research. They're great research into Parkinson's at the moment, and creating neuro stem cells that are Parkinson's resistant and genetically matching your own.
That is insane. That's
really
so
cool stuff.
I only know about stem cell stuff because of a rare genetic condition that I have that they're doing research into. So I find this thing like really
If you want to come to the lab and talk to people, I can. That would be interesting.
Yeah.
To meet, because they'll be way more articulate and know more what they're talking about than I do.
Well, I think the research for this one is happening in Holland, I believe, because I think there are different centres that specialise in different things. So the one that I have is called EEC syndrome, which is actually ectodermal dysplasia clefting syndrome, which means a variety of things. So I was born with missing fingers and my hands fused together. But the thing with the stem cells is that at some point, not in everybody who has EEC, but the corneal cells break down and they think that they're a different kind of cell and they will reproduce as that, which means that I won't be able to see anymore. And they can't do corneal transplants because your cornea is replaced all the time by the way your genetics is made, so it would just wipe it again. So they're doing research into that at the moment, but because it's such a rare condition, there's not much funding for it because not many people have it.
That's so interesting. But they're doing what? They work in Holland.
Yeah, I believe that it's in Holland. So I have a geneticist in Newcastle, which is where I'm from, and I go to Guy's Hospital, the rare disease clinic, down in London. So you were working in Edinburgh, and you've written a book about that.
Tales for a New Age. I would really like to see you let loose in that lab and chat to people, because I think they'd like you and you just ask them really good questions. Tales for a New Age. I love fairy tale books. Mm-hmm. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
Yes.
We don't want to be friends with those people.
Sorry.
Yeah,
That's all right.
No.
You can come in.
You can come in.
That looks... Oh, it's a Zoom.
It's, yeah. What is this fancy? I don't know. I just...
No, well, they've changed. I had one
was it
ages ago.
huge?
This massive old thing. Yeah, it was shit as well.
Tales for a New Age is a book
Yeah.
that I hope will be a like a modern fairy tale book for adults, all about this weird and wacky, amazing wilderness of synthetic biology.
Oh my god, I'm hooked. Okay.
So I interviewed 17 different scientists and got them to write stories. First time ever. I don't think there's any other anthology book of stories written by scientists before. And all of them have lessons or ideas or thoughts that they hope people will carry forward as we enter this new age of genome engineering. And
yeah. I don't know any science. I know there was, I think it was Simon Barraclough did a poetry collection called Laboratorio where he was in a science lab and wrote poetry and got input from scientists, but not stories. This sounds incredible.
And it's really important to me that the scientists themselves did it.
Yes.
Wrote the stories. Maybe it goes back to the nerd whispering I did at NASA, but I have to stop calling it that because I don't think scientists would really appreciate it. But I love fairy tale books, and those fairy tales were oral traditions, then written down, and all like community specific about like the lessons and emotion, like the psychological transitions that people need to go through to grow up, using amazing imagery and creative imagination, and clearly they're timeless and they still carry on with us today. But I question about who the storytellers really need to be as we enter like truly paradigm shifting times where medicine and genetics and humans as we know it are changing and going to change. And I would really like to see the people who are on the forefront of that think about the emotional lessons that we need to learn from this, or think about, and I also think it's important for the public to know that the scientists themselves are thinking about these things, and they're deep thinkers, and they're interesting, and they're creative, and they're thoughtful, and they're sensitive. So I really wanted the scientists themselves to tell these stories that they think are important, that we should be reading and we need to know. So they're all over the board, different kinds of stories and tales for New Age. Some are memoirs, some are fiction, which are really fun. Some are science fiction, some are poetry, so all different kinds of things.
Oh, wow. Okay, so when is this coming out? Because I need to read it now.
Yeah, thank you. I will give you a copy.
Yes, please.
It's with my agent now, so we're just seeing who might be interested.
Because, fairy tales are like my... Like, I am just...
They're my bag. I studied them.
You studied them?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what I studied in school. I studied fairy tales.
Okay, we should hang out more.
Yeah, we totally
you
know all about Maria Tatar.
Yeah, yes. No, so I do a series on my channel on the history of fairy tales. And
what?
Yeah,
Stop! Why are we hanging out all the time on this?
Okay, and finally, is a film of your book happening? Is that happening?
Yeah.
It is.
Well, it's happening in the Hollywood version of Happening, so it's been optioned.
Okay. Who would can Lily James play you? Because that's who I would like
That's
to
so
play.
nice. You're the best.
I just was imagining it.
Yes.
And ever since I went to see the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, I'm like, that's what this film is going to be. It's going to be like that.
I love that book. I didn't know so much happened on Guernsey. I was totally ignorant. That was amazing. That was very interesting. I liked that film too. Yeah. That was great.
Okay, so what stage are we at? So it's been optioned.
It's been optioned. Sean and my book, they slammed them together, put them together, optioned them both.
Okay.
So they thought I had the romantic narrative. Sean has like the anecdotes of working in a bookshop.
And the bitterness.
And the bitterness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Bitterness. It's very funny. So it's been optioned by a company called Annapurna Pictures. They're really good. They did Zero Dark 30 and Joy and American Hustle and all those good things. And I can't talk about it more than that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm very excited. And I
Thanks,
hope that it happens.
We need to get together about fairy tales like pronto.
Yeah. Let's do that.
Okay.